Welcome to today's Texas Coach to Coaches. I'm Joe Linehan, and today's speaker is Justin Pudwill. Justin grew up in Baytown and played for Baytown Sterling, and he was the head coach at Whittier College from 2007 to 2018. He is now back in Houston, and he's the lead referee for the Houston kind of area for high school and club. Justin is going to talk about motion offense, a little bit of a double post, just offense. Please. We do encourage, please ask questions. Please have comments. This is a sharing space here. So this is going to be a back and forth. But I'm going to hand it over to Justin now. Thanks a lot for doing this, Justin.
Sure, no problem. So get this going. Bear with me a minute. All right, so I'm going to start with a little bit of a slideshow just because there's kind of a lot of information to go over, and try and do my best to portray and kind of explain kind of what we did with my women's team at Whittier from year one all the way till we finished. And a big portion of why I thought it was important to do this was just because in the water polo community, I think sharing knowledge, except for the last 6 months, it seems like the community's kind of turned a little bit more to whether it be interviews, podcasts, and knowledge-based information sharing. I think we're really behind on that that type of education that we can all kind of learn from each other. So I try to just put some things together that if you think what you run is highly elite or like something nobody's ever seen before, it's not really true. If good coaches pay attention, if they are your direct competition and they scout correctly, it's not really a secret. Now, are they good at defending it or vice versa? That's a whole nother thing. And if they can get their athletes to do it. But being at the NCAA level for, 13 plus years, I stole a lot. I watched a lot of higher level teams, attended practices of the national team and USC and stuff like that. So just trying to encourage coaches to kind of share with younger coaches. In Texas, this could be a huge advantage in kind of growing the sport and making sure that the kids that are playing are getting their fair share. If we stop with education, then you don't think you can learn anymore, then that's really kind of your cap. So I kind of put on there, like, why do coaches think what they have is sacred? And I don't know why. Even while I was coaching, I had some plays that we ran for years, 5-on-6 defenses, and it seems like nobody could really figure out what we were doing and had good success at times with it. But even myself, I thought, was very, very crazy about what we do is what we do, and you don't want it to get out. But it doesn't really make a difference because good coaches, they pay attention and they know what you're doing. We don't share enough. And I put the reference in the NCAA basket coaches conferences. They have these huge conferences, 15 elite coaches, Duke, Xavier, Kentucky, and they all get together and one coach will go over 2 or 3 inbound plays or what their offense is. And this is their direct competition. And I spoke with the Xavier basketball coach, and just asked him about ideas with that. And he was like, well, yeah, once you get to a certain level, all the plays are really the same, but you just got to have better athletes to stop what they're going to do. And so I thought that was kind of a good point where we should just be a little bit better on sharing our knowledge. So this offense that I'm going to go over is called, we call it the 4-2 offense. And the background of this offense was when I started at Whittier, I was only doing the men's team. And the women's team coach, we started at the same time, quit a year and a half in, probably about a month before our season started. And so recruiting wasn't done really well. They just graduated a bunch of seniors, and I only had 9 girls on the team. Some of them were very raw. Some of them were probably not ready to play at that level. And then I had like 2 or 3 that were pretty solid, not all Americans, but we're good for our conference. And then I had 1 really, really good attacker. The only problem was our average height was 5'1". So we weren't going to be able to run a 3-3. It just was not possible. It would have been horrible. So I saw that I had, a couple girls that could handle the ball really well, and were extremely coachable, and 1 really, really good driver. So I was trying to kind of figure out, like, what am I going to be able to do with this group of girls to be successful? And so I wanted to kind of come up with an offense for us that kind of got the most out of our players and their skill set. And I don't think that's utilized as much, because whether people don't know water polo, or they're scared to get creative, or whatever, I highly suggest, just kind of focusing on that from like year to year. 2, like the 3-3, like European water polo is like so boring to me at times when there's no movement, just big dudes, put the ball in, draw an exclusion. Now it's fun to watch dudes shoot 67 miles per hour, for sure. But the women's, like NCAA, if you look at it, the most, like, they have some really creative coaches. There's a lot of movement, and a lot of stuff gets done. And I'm sure there are a lot of coaches who are very successful with the 3-3 and have all the talent in the world that they need to run that. But for me, I was like trying to look for something different. So lastly, I wanted to make sure that, because we didn't really have as much talent as I needed, we needed to make teams to have to kind of prepare for us. And so it wasn't just kind of like a walk in the park game. And so when we kind of developed into the 4-2 and we started running this offense, what I found was, like, standard defensive tactics weren't going to work that well against us. So it made coaches have to, prepare more for us, whether we won or lost. I felt like we really made teams like really have to work. And then, of course, as we got much more talent over the years, this offense became, much more complex in what we could do. So the basic principles of this is, if we ever got down into the 4-2 and we're just sitting there, that, like, our offense was kind of over. So we wanted to create the most offensive opportunities we could off the counterattack. So this is a little bit different, and I'll go over some whiteboard stuff before I kind of show up some of these water polo clips. But we broke the pull down into 3 different areas. You either played the 1-2 side, the 4-5 side, or which we called like the 56, or you were a 2-3 player, which was the middle. So we had like the left, the right, and center. And those pairs worked together in the offense. And they had to go to their side. So I'll kind of explain that as well. So a lot of times, and I think I kind of put this in there, if you were just watching us normally for the first time, it looked like chaos. Like, girls were swimming crisscross from the pool. If you were a 1-2 side player, but you were defending X1, you had to swim all the way over to the 1-2 side. So it is a little bit different. We definitely were trying to look for front water or advantage. If we got our back to the cage, it usually wasn't going to work out very well for us because of our height. And there were some teams where we did have a center, and so we did some different things, but most of it was predicated on holding front water, gaining advantage. Like I said, that's what we were really good at, was being crafty. And we always usually tried to start with one side of the pool and using, that side, and once that side was done, then we used the other side. So a lot of times we had a lot of big switches from the ball, and ball movement was really important for us. And a really positive thing for us was when we were starting and girls were playing 25 meters and you only have a 30-second shot clock. A lot of the times when we drew an exclusion, which was mostly the result in this offense, was we were already set up on a 6-on-5 offense. So we didn't have to waste time getting people from one side to the other, switching spots. So that was another good time benefit for us.
So when you say front waters, kind of, is that also known as the inside water?
Yeah, inside water. Yeah, we were always holding players on our backs. So we were always trying to keep front water. And here's just a little bit different breakdown where, we had the 3 offensive sides, left, right, or center. So when I subbed players in, I just told them, you're playing the left, you're playing the right, you're playing the center. And then they each had like a different set of rules. So if you played the 1-2 side, you couldn't go anywhere else except that side. Same for the 4-5 side, or 56 right side players. And then the 2 girls who played the middle, the centers or the 23 players, they could go wherever they want. So they had really no rules except for they had to make sure that the ball was going to be in a position to be entered to them when they had front water. And again, I'll try and do a little bit more whiteboard style and kind of go over some stuff. And we were trying to move the ball like down the pool as fast as possible. We wanted to fill up the bottom line first, so that meant in a 4-2 setup, the 1 and the 6 spot, we wanted to fill those ones up first. So if you played the 1-2 side and you normally ended up at the 4 spot on top, you didn't just stop there if the 1 wasn't filled up yet. So we wanted to kind of fill up the bottom line and then be able to drive an attack, and then we would have our top line. And again, we literally wanted to go as fast as possible. We were very much like a LMU basketball team that was trying to just jump out and shoot threes. Like, we wanted to move fast. The earliest offensive opportunity we could get was what we were trying to go for. And of course, as we talk about this, all rules are negated if we had like a 1-on-nobody. If we had a 1-on-nobody or a 2-on-1, vice versa, then that person would just attack to score. So even if they weren't the center, they were supposed to attack to score. Lastly, and we worked a lot on this, was all players could and were encouraged to go 1-versus-1. So I think water polo has definitely moved away from the like 1v1, I guess, attack a defensive player, turn them, get front water, and try and score. It was the way I kind of played a lot when I was growing up, and it just, that development in water polo, I feel like it's kind of not used as much. It's much more team oriented. So we tried to highlight a lot of our attackers, and that could go 1-versus-1. And so if it wasn't going to take away from the offense at all, like if you were the first release down the pool and that girl could turn that girl and drive in and score, that was encouraged. So, and then we had like 2 different types of teams, during the 11 years that I was there. Early on, it was very standard. I would say it was a lot easier to game plan for than like my last 5 or 6 years. Originally, like when we started getting good at it, I had a lefty playing the 2-post. So that triangle over there, that lefty went to the 2-post every single time. And then I had a 3-post player who was always trying to drive ball side. So it was very clockwork. There wasn't as much creativity in the beginning, but it worked really well for us. Like the players that we had there and the center who was a left-hander on that 2-post, they did a really good job. But it wasn't going to be as good as if I just put her in the middle and then let a team drop. We still didn't really have like super elite shooters on the outside or something like that. So that's how kind of it started. After we got more talent and players were developed as they were in the system, we eventually had 2 attackers in the water who would attack the post at any time, and they'd mix it up with picks. And you can kind of see the videos I have, saved are from the last 4 or 5 years. And so you'll kind of see like I guess like when we were doing it at our best. Attack early. If it doesn't take away from the offense, go 1 versus 1. And then there's going to be a lot of times where I might contradict myself. Like I always told them to attack, but we got to be patient, and I'm not always trying to make myself right, but it's way different when you're standing on deck and you can see the play developing rather than the kids who are in the water. And so as kids were in this offense for, a couple years, they got it after a while. Not lastly, but I am a human Joey sticker. That is me. I am my girls team. Even if we didn't have a lot of talent and years that we did have a lot of talent, they were awesome at listening. I think women do a really good job of trying to follow directions. So I was able to kind of move girls around where I wanted them to go, or even if they didn't want to go one-on-one and attack early, if I yelled their last name, they knew they had to. So they did a really good job with that. But some coaches I've seen sit on the deck, they say no words, they don't yell, and they've won 12 CIF championships. And other coaches you see yell the whole time, or I don't call it yelling, coaching the whole time, and can be successful and or not successful. For me, that's how I kind of coached, was very, very, very involved. But at the D3 level, we didn't always have a lot of time with our kids, so everything was very crunched. If they end up covering the drives or attacks to the post, our top line would get really good looks on cage. So it was kind of a win versus win. We kind of predicated this offense off drives and attacks to the cage, and a lot of teams didn't work on one-on-one defense. So what they did was ran like a 4-man drop. And so they would just drop from everywhere to try and take away the middle because they were always so scared of getting excluded, which resulted with our better shooters on top would end up getting good looks. So it almost kind of put us into a 6-on-5 opportunity if they did cover up our attacking offense. Lastly, this offense I really like because it didn't let a defensive team or another team really get comfortable on defense. They had to play defense for the whole possession because we were always moving. And so I don't think it's a strength for a lot of people to really focus on defense because it's not fun. It's not fun for your athletes. Sometimes it's kind of daunting going over the same thing over and over again. And so people just end up dropping, like go to the zone because it's really easy. And so this really kind of helped out making sure that they had to play defense for the whole possession. So I'll try and go over.
So real quick, Justin, how did your girls kind of react that first year that you said, okay, we're going to do something different?
I think they kind of got it because they knew we didn't have a lot. Like I said, they just had a coach bail on them, and I was like kind of there and already had a lot on my plate, but I really liked the group of girls. So it was good for us. There were years where I was really deep on my men's team. And so we would have a first line that would run a very traditional offense and had like our strongest players. And then like my second line, when they would sub in, they would run a 4-2. So those guys were really interested in getting that coaching and running it because it gave them a lot of value in the game, which was good. Two, it's like you want to put kids in a spot where they can succeed. So if you have a girl or a guy who can't pressure pass very well, you don't want to put them on a side or in a position where they can't pressure pass. I was a lot different than the coach that the girls had that were there too. So I was just like, we're running this. You have no other option. Like, this is it. But they did a really good job with it. It just took a lot of time. Remember, that first year I only had 9 girls. So there was no scrimmaging. There was like, we would do one half of the pool and then stop for practice and then do the other half.
But I mean, but this offense almost comes down to that kind of where you're just either focusing on one triangle or focusing on the other triangle.
Yeah.
Is that kind of correct?
Yeah. And it's very, like when they were running it at the beginning, it was very basic like that. It's like, we're going to use one side and then use the other. And so, like I said, I'll go over a little bit more, but yeah, it was very much, that was kind of like a necessity for us to just even be able to practice.
And knowing, and we don't need to be nice here. I mean, that was allowed you to kind of focus on your primary 2-3 best players, and then maybe kind of hide some kids on the other side of the pool. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah. And so like the very first year, like I said, I had a really good attacker. So she played the 3-post. And then I had 2 other girls who had individual skill and were really good at pressure passing. So they played the 5-6. And so I put them in a position to succeed. And then we had a really good offensive player, and she wasn't as good off the drive as the girl who I used on the 3-post. So she got creative over on the 2-post and sometimes would go in, and she could play center a little bit, but she wasn't a center. It was more of a post up. So this kind of let her play to her strengths. And the other 2 girls who played the 1 and the 4 were both right-handed attackers. One had a really good shot. One was like solid. And so I was like, well, if they drop off them over there, at least we'll get a shot off. But they weren't as good with pressure passing. So I didn't want to put them on the 5-6 side, because that's where all the pressure was going to be at. But yeah, it was just literally trying to, use the most, I guess, out of what I had.
No. Hey, I completely, and that really translates to a lot of high school teams here that may only have, 1 or 2 dominant players. And even those kind of the new teams that are starting fall of 2021 that might only have, one dominant player. So just to kind of create an offense, this can even, it might be more difficult at first, but it actually kind of simplifies things a little bit. So.
And it made it really easy for them because there was a game plan, right? It's like, if this doesn't work, then we use the other side. And if that doesn't work, we're going to get a shot off and then go play defense. It wasn't like, work the ball around. And a lot of coaches, like, if they have one really good player, they end up putting them at center. And it's like, that's the easiest spot to take away. So like, why would you put that best person at center? And they can be double teamed or triple teamed. So it was out of necessity, but in the end, it ended up being really fun too, because it gave us a lot to work on. And then as we got more players, they had never run anything like this, so it was very new for them. So everyone had to be really engaged.
Yeah. So, and I don't mean to go off topic here, but like you mentioned to put your best player at center, we actually had this thing where we actually kind of would put our worst player at center and kind of hide them at center to a certain extent. Just kind of put them on the 2-post, and then we just kind of work that 4 or 5 triangle. So
yeah. Well, and it also depends too, like with having smaller players for us, when they got front water and a larger player even kind of remotely touch them, it looked really bad. So we kind of played into our strengths because, if you put a big girl or, a bigger player at center and they have a bigger defender, it's going to be way harder for them to earn exclusion. So usually my smallest girls on the team played the middle, because anytime they got touched or anytime they got fouled even hard, it looked horrible. And all the coaches know, and officials, that when that happens and you go, whoa, they have to call the exclusion, so it just looks so bad. And so and those girls were usually our toughest, and they were able to take that kind of punishment. Kudos to them, which was awesome. But it just, you'll see in the video, it just kind of definitely it worked really well for us. And I just really kind of highlight any coaches, if you have a limited team, you got to be creative a little bit. You got to be a little bit creative. It's going to keep you as a coach engaged. And it's not just the standard quo. It's going to keep your kids engaged, which is nice. So anyways, we always kind of did new stuff. And at I mean, depending on what level you're at, sometimes in high school, you're not going to have maybe more than a couple plays, maybe one 6-on-5 play or whatever. We had a lot, just because coaches were really good, and they were very good at game planning and preparing, and the athletes were there for a reason. They all wanted to be there. So they were all very good at game planning. So you have to be kind of very creative, and be up to date. So, but yeah, I do have the whiteboard set up. I hope you guys can kind of see it. But this is just kind of the numbering system that we used: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, like I said, our objective was to try and fill up the bottom line first. The 2 and the 3 are just here for referencing for numbers, and then the top line. And so what I was talking about before, like if this girl here, and this pair were defending on the opposite side of the pool, on the other side, no matter what, they had to go play their side. And this happened anywhere. So you had a lot of times where we had girls crisscrossing over the pool like this, which really confused defenders. And then it kind of like would go to the middle, and then kind of like the middle would open, and then we'd have one of our post players here and then attack. And so that was kind of like the basis for us. And the girls that played for me, they know we called it organized chaos. So it was like people would come and watch us, and it would look really nuts. Like nobody would know what was going on, but we always kind of knew what was going on. We primarily use the right side first, especially early in the years running this. And so we would try and get our 6th player to get the ball first and get the ball down the pool. And so this gave room here in the middle for our attackers to be able to go to the cage. So we usually had an outlet over here, the ball moved down, and the ball moved down here. And then they would fill in this line. Okay, so the 1-4 players, they would go to their spots. So they would come in, and then you'd randomly be seeing like the 2 and like the 3 out here. And so if they were set and the ball hadn't got down yet, they would wait around 5 or 6 meters, and they didn't really have any rules other than they had to wait until the ball was in position to be entered, because we never wanted to throw the ball over going to the goalie, if that made sense, unless there's a ton of front water. So once we moved the ball down, you would see this girl who was playing the 3 would attack ball side. This girl as well could attack ball side. But as we got a little bit more complex as this went on, these 2 girls would work in tandem. So a lot of times they'd have defenders here, and the 2 would come sit a back pick, and she'd roll, and then they'd come off the side this way. And so those little nuances in the offense come with time and experience, very, very early. And if you were going to try and implement like something like this just to a new team, what we did was this person went straight to the post, right? So this is your center, and you put them on the 2 post. And then if you have a really good attacker, a really good driver, you give them free range to kind of go wherever they want. And as soon as the ball gets down and entered, they go ball side. And so with the ball side attack, this girl is either going to have to drop, which they did a lot, which gives this girl a free pass. So they're able to pass over and then be able to use this side. When I had the lefty here at the 2 post, it was really good because when she would turn and make a strong move, she was going this way, right? She was going away from usually the drop that would happen from the 5-6 or I guess 4-5 side. I hope that's not too confusing.
So would you get that lefty to try to get a little bit more, more center cage?
No, she would be on the 2 posts. Then she would make a move, because as soon as you also got to think about the collegiate officiating is better, right? And so if you make a good, strong move and you're a left-hander, and normally coaches do not drop from the 1 and that 4 spot, because those are usually your best shooters. So what they would do is once we'd have the 3 in there, they would zone that, right? And so these girls could play catch and then just be able to go over to that side and be able to enter down to the 2. The goalie usually didn't come out to chase until maybe that lefty's like junior or senior year. She had to get a little bit better with, a reverse turn and stuff like that. But that was like the basic gist of it in the setup. And that's how I would, like I said, suggest doing it if you were going to try to start. The other thing that I talked about was attacking early. When we made our first outlet, like if this was the 6 and she got the ball and there was a defender, all of my team was back here, right? They're just moseying down the pool. So there's no drive going to happen yet. She's going to have to wait anyways for the offense to come. That's when we really encourage like a 1-versus-1 offensive attack. So when she got the ball down here, like if this was Sabrina, I would yell, Sabrina, 1-on-1, 1-on-1. And she would attack the defender, work for a turn, and then either an exclusion or go inside. And Sabrina did play the 5-6 side. So she's really used to that, but that's why we ended up putting our better pressure passers on that 5-6 side, because a lot of the coaches would yell foul and drop. Everybody's heard foul and drop, right? And in my last 4 or 5 years, all of my team was from Commerce, and we were all really good at going 1-versus-1. And so I was like, yeah, go foul and drop. Here you go. And then they would turn her, and then we'd draw an exclusion. So before the offensive even happened, I was always trying to promote offense, like offense, like attack, attack, attack. And then if they didn't have anything, of course, we would wait, and we want to be patient and let the attacks finish out. Any questions so far? I can try and get to the video, and then there might be a lot more questions.
Yeah, please, coaches, just kind of feel free to kind of ask questions or kind of share your thoughts either in the chat or just simply just talk. So I do have a question for Sabrina. As a player kind of coming into this type of offense, how was that transition for you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm driving. I think that, well, the first year, I think you just have to kind of figure out what's going on at the NCAA level, right? And so, but if everybody's on the same page, it kind of helps, it forces you to be on the same page. I think that Justin, we did a lot of communicating about it. And so he didn't kind of just say, go do it. We talked a lot prior to and worked, hours and hours and hours upon it. And then, I don't know, I don't think it was a big transition from just a traditional center. But I guess the experience is probably different for everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Didn't mean to interrupt, Justin, sorry.
It's all right. No, and it's good to have players, players' ideas on it. A lot of them really liked it because we were highlighting their, like what they were really good at, and so it's different than taking somebody who's a center defender, but yet they're a freshman and you have a junior and a senior above them that are a little bit better, but if they have a good skill set, it's like trying to use the best out of them. But yeah, I mean, we try and you got to remember, once you get like 3-4 years in, it became very easy for them. Then we just got to work on like the more detailed intricacies of like each position. It's like, hey, if you look here, it's the fun stuff when you get for water polo. It's like a lot of time coaches are working on throwing, swimming, treading water. Like it's like when you finally get to work on like the fourth look you're looking on 6-on-5, and when that kid sees that X5 player leave the 3-post and they vertical pass in, and you're like, yes, you're like, finally, so that kind of stuff got better. But I'll show the video, and this will be a little bit better of an explanation, and there's some writing on the clips, and kind of go through these so that I think this will make sense a little bit more, and hopefully you guys can see really well. So
Are you seriously kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
seriously kidding me?
Yeah. I knew you were going to be on. I was like, this is going to be great. This is 4.5 minutes of Felix getting mad, everybody. So
Oh, we're gonna get a rebuttal. This is awesome.
My God.
we'll get some good comments.
So you guys are in dark. So you guys are in dark, and
Well, this is our home game. And I don't even remember what year this is. And but Brown usually played us at least once during spring break, or we played them down in San Diego sometimes, or at LMU. We always tried to play at least once a year, so it was always nice for them to be able to come out. And the reason I showed this video, because we were really good in our conference, and so a couple of the years we kind of ran away with games. Like, we didn't have a ton of challenging games, and so Brown always did a really good job. They were always kind of like a quirky matchup for us. They were always way bigger. It was we just always had a whether we were a much better team or they were a much better team, like, they were always really good games. So, and I thought they usually had a good game plan, but I think this is a young team for Felix. So I think we came out on the positive end of this one. But you can see this is kind of where the offense works. And we don't really get anything off the drives, but we get a really good look on the top. And for me, that was like a very positive offensive opportunity. That girl was at 5 meters on the 2 post and dropped, and she was one of our best shooters. So, like, that was okay for her to shoot early. Some coaches don't like that. They want to use the whole clock, work for center, but for us, it was totally fine. So this one, if you start using the 5-6 side a lot, or the 4-5 side a lot, the 1-2 side kind of loses attention. So we would switch the ball on where we would go down on the outlet pass. And here in the right corner, you'll see the lefty going one-on-one. She had open space. And a lot of these result in exclusions. I mean, it was kind of like our bread and butter. So everything was usually exclusion oriented for us. There's our first drive, right? So the cool thing about this offense that I liked was people knew who our center players were, but they didn't know who was going first. And so it made teams really kind of, they really had to pay attention the whole time. And then I could switch the centers, because this team, we were very versatile. So at a timeout, I could switch the 2 center players and keep the same players in the water. And yet then the coaches who would put their best defenders on my drivers now had put their best defenders on a perimeter player.
Yeah, that was a good example of just, you have the exclusion, and then you're already set up before they can even get into their 5-on-6.
Yeah, and a lot of teams or coaches, you'll hear them say like, patience, slow it down. We were like completely the opposite. It was like, we probably averaged 25 to 30 drawn exclusions a game in these years, and that's a lot. And we had pretty good percentages out of our 6-on-5s, but we weren't gonna like dominate somebody, from the outside. And so, like I said, we just had to kind of use what was our best. This one is going to be really good ball movement. We don't get an exclusion. There goes a big switch to the other side, and we get a really good look on Cage. You see how you can see the group of players sitting in the middle of the pool? Those are like my post players. So where I told, try and go over, like, they didn't really have any rules. They were waiting for the ball to get down for them to be able to drive and attack the cage.
Oh, wow.
You can kind of see like the two players working in tandem. After one drove, she came up and set a back pick and then went down. We didn't get anything out of it. This is not like some sort of magic offense where you score every single time. But again, like I said, just good looks on cage is what we were looking for in the end.
So did you work on those things in practice, like the back picks and the picks to get those type of opportunities?
Yeah, so when we would get into like after you do your swimming, your passing, shooting, and stuff like that, we would always break into like I had a great pool. As you guys see, this facility was awesome. I had 6 cages. I was well equipped with assistant coaches, and even when I was by myself, I separated 1-2 side into their side, 4-5 side into their side, and then center players, they had their own cage, and they all worked together. And I gave them like an extra goalie would be a passer for the drivers, and they would work on attacks, and they would work on back picks, and they would work on communication. And then they got really good together because they've been doing it for 2 or 3 years together, where the 1-4 side would work on shooting with a drop because that's when they were going to get their open looks. So it was very specialized. I knew what teams were going to do to us, so we worked on that like the most. Even though we didn't really get anything off that because Arlene was like 4'11" and she was super small, and the brown girl was probably 1.5 feet taller than her. But that was really kind of what we were looking for. They worked in tandem, tried to attack the post. We had a lot of turnovers, don't get me wrong, because we were moving a lot. It was a high reward, high risk kind of offense for us. But a lot of the time it was.
Now, like they're like your 3 players that are kind of hanging back at half tank. They just saw that early offense happening, and I assume you're okay. Stop, wait before you go up. Correct. Yeah.
Because they knew like we promoted early offense, and so I think we have one of our 4 or 5 side players down here, Angelica, and then these 2 girls were our post players, and so they were already set up. They were going to make something happen before. There's the least amount of defense, the better. So, but the important thing that I try and, if somebody's asked me about that is if that girl who was on the 2 post, like never surrendered front water. So when that girl tried to get around her, it looked horrible, right? And the official he's going to have to make that call because it looks so bad, right? So it makes them play defense the whole time because our objective was to always try and gain front water.
So I have a quick question. So if you are trying to play for the front water, and is there usually any time when they pass it up, well, they're like, well, that wasn't a good enough look, and they have to cycle again, or you see what I'm saying? Like, is that a good enough look to make the pass, or should I just just let them circle out? They only had just maybe a slight advantage. Or did y'all? I mean, where y'all were just let's go for it. We're just going to do the whole possession game. We're going to get more possessions and we'll get more looks.
No, I mean, we would the girls who played the 5-6 side were my highest IQ players, right? Because they were dependent heavily on making that pass, and they did have turnovers, right? They saw the post and it worked 4 times before, and they're forcing stuff in, and they knew it. We talk about it a lot. It's like, don't force that. Let's at least get the possession, at least get a shot off. But it's hard. I don't want to sound contradictory because, like I said, I wanted to feed the post. I wanted to earn an exclusion. A lot of times we put better players, other teams, better defenders and players in foul trouble fast, like really fast. And I would put those smaller attackers on the other team's best players so that they would get them in foul trouble fast. But yeah, there were times where they did not make that pass, and then we would have to go to the other side or up on top. But when we got to that, in my opinion, the offense looked real bad. We were just stagnant. It's a bunch of small girls, right? You know, it's not like we're taking up a lot of water or shooting the ball incredibly hard. Like, they were good at what they did, but we definitely tried to get off a move on the attack as much as possible rather than, being more traditional, I guess.
I have a question that might be somewhat similar. Your 23 players are kind of freelancers. They can go wherever they want, essentially. On that last play, you had a post-up player who wasn't one of your dedicated 23 players. Is that right? The one who received the pass initially?
No.
Water?
She was one of the 23 players, but
okay.
Like, let's say the 6 and the 1, right? The very opposite ends of the pool are down the pool themselves. If the 1 and, like, let's say the 6 had the ball on the right side of the pool and the 1 made a backdoor move, of course it's like, give her the ball.
Okay.
Because if there was open space, the way that I kind of phrase it to them, if there's open space and you're not taking away from the offense, so like you're not, like the centers aren't down the pool yet, by all means, you can drive. If anything, you're just going to attack and then go back out to the spot you came from. So we just always tried to highlight the fact that, that individual defense is not something that I think a ton of people work on. I'm not saying that primarily against Brown, because I could show you guys some SkyX films where we drew like 45 exclusions. It's negated. This defense or this offense just really makes every player on the other team be held accountable. Like, they don't get to just kind of like chill out for a while. Like, they never knew who was going to go to the middle or make a move on them. And so that's kind of where we capitalized.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that. Obviously, it's because I was just thinking about our battles, and we literally played every year. And it's the most difficult thing about playing Whittier's team when Justin was coaching them was the fact that we didn't practice against them. We didn't have film on them, right? So we went in there like, we had an idea, right? But it was difficult to say because we went playing Whittier, then we're playing LMU right the next day. So, but it was I think probably the most impressive thing about Justin is he wasn't trying to fit a square peg in a round circle, right? He's like, hey, what's going to work for us? This is going to work for us. And while he inherited a team of 9, I can tell you right now, he ultimately started recruiting players that fit this mold because it was so different, and he was really, really successful. And the one thing that I would probably say, I won't get too critical on the officials and what they missed, but his players knew exactly when, and he said it, as soon as you stopped to catch your breath, they were going to take advantage of whatever you gave them. They knew exactly if you were on the left side, what move they were going to do, if they were on the right side. And every single one of them, while they were playing one-on-one, the person with the ball knew this, so that it's almost like when that move happened, they knew where to put the ball, what type of advantage, how long to hold the ball, when to make the pass, because they kept doing it. And they truly believed in their system. And that's what made them successful. We can sit back and be like, well, I don't know if this is good water polo. What do you mean it's not good water polo? You got 6 players out there on the same page attacking, right, with great ball handling skills. How is that not good water polo? Just because might not like the fact that they don't have a traditional center doesn't mean that it's that one way is better than the other. The best part about watching Justin's teams play is that they truly, and I think as a coach, is like they truly believe in what they're doing. And while some of them might have questioned certain things, right? You wouldn't know it because they felt like they've been playing together for like 20 years. So whatever you were doing worked, and it especially made it very difficult when we didn't play you enough, and then we're playing completely a team that we back in our conference, we're playing Harvard and Michigan and Princeton, and then we go out west and we always play Whittier because I always felt it was a good way to teach them that you're right about individual defense. This is why we do these tedious drills defensively, because you can't always rely on your teammates. So just wanted that, not that you needed any reinforcement of what you did as a coach, but I can tell you right now, I think you as a coach, probably I had more respect for what you did at your program with what you were working with than what Jovan has at SC.
I mean, I appreciate that. And I think we see that a lot. Like when I watch games now, or even when I was, coaching in college, when I saw somebody doing something different, every time I was like, yes, like that was cool. Like, because you really had to game plan a whole different way other. And yeah, like we always caught an East Coast team off guard because it was way different water polo than what they saw. The teams in our conference knew we were just kind of better at times, or, maybe they were better, whatever. But I mean, we played some really intense games. Like my favorite game with this women's program, we lost to Long Beach State, who was ranked number 10 by 1 goal in the last 4 seconds. And like they came in on a Saturday morning, they're probably a little hungover and thought it was going to be a walk in the park, and they didn't even know what happened. We were up by 3 or 4 at one time, and I knew we were going to have a hard time sustaining, because they had Olympians on their team. And it was like, there's no way this is going to happen. But it was so fun just because they had no idea what was going on, and they had no idea what was going on for 4 quarters. So that's what I really kind of like about inventive offenses. And yes, this worked for us. It fit my players, it fit my mold. And then I was able to recruit players who fit this mold, and they came and watched us, and they knew they would have an immediate, like they could help out right away. So
Felix, after a couple of years of playing them, what was your game plan kind of going into the game? Just like your general game plan that you went over with your girls kind of prior. Just curious.
Maybe Felix is gone.
I don't know. He's still here. That's okay.
All right, I'll keep going here.
I have a question there.
Yeah.
So if the defense is adjusted and say maybe we're playing off a little and giving less opportunities for inside water and hard, ball side drives. So if they took that away, did the girls start trying to say that's the second option is maybe a foul outside of 5, or a post up, turn their drive into a post up if the defense is adjusting to, they're playing off slightly to better drive defense.
So some of the hardest games for us was when a team went into like a 4-man zone, right? So the 2 post players had driven in, but they're dropping from the 1, 4, 5, and 6. And so it took away 85% of our offense, which was rough. But I did have some really good shooters on the outside. So then you were just getting really good looks on Cage. And I don't know about you, but with them sometimes, one girl misses a shot and the next girl misses a shot, and you're still in the second quarter. Like those bar outs just keep coming all game long. And so that can kind of be a little rough. We had a game with Kowloon. We should have beat them by a lot, but they just zoned us really hard. 4-man zone, and the wind was blowing, and it's out in Thousand Oaks, and my girls were just like not really ready for it. We ended up winning the game, but it was like 6-4 instead of normally what we would beat somebody like 15-7. So yes, I mean, there are going to be differences, and we literally, my average height of this team was 5'1", okay, across the board, from my best player all the way down to the worst. Like we had 0 height. I really didn't care about height, but if we needed to run something different, that would be a little bit tricky for us. So yeah, I mean, you're going to live and die by it. And most of the time it worked out, but sometimes, it didn't.
Yeah. Felix, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
No, but what was your game plan kind of going in after a couple years of seeing this, kind of going out there? I'm just curious, just your basic gameplay.
Yes, I think the one thing was that you didn't want them to. If you saw this was a young team. I remember this team where like our best player was out for the season for shoulder injury, but we had talented players. I think the one thing that if you saw this, they when we were they were fast, they were quick, and they moved a lot. They exerted a lot of energy offensively, right? I think the one thing that we wanted to make them play defense. So we couldn't guard them at one end because we weren't built to guard them, but we were hoping that with patience, we couldn't attack as quickly. We try to slow the game down and post the smaller defenders up and rely on outside shooting if we had some. I struggled a couple of years finding outside shooters, so that was always like our Achilles heel. And so we tried to like almost make them play defense to the extent where they didn't have the energy to counter as hard, but it almost like didn't matter. And again, this is no offense to Joe, because obviously he knows, but when you go play Whittier at Whittier, those officials, like, they're used to that game, so they're going to allow I'll tell you a funny story. It's funny. It wasn't funny at the time, but I can laugh about it now. So I went to an official. I said, "Hey, let me ask you a question," just because this was in all that. How are you going to call a perimeter? And she said, "Well, listen, because they're smaller, they'll probably get quicker fouls just because we want to make sure like your athletes are probably fouling them. But you guys are going to have to probably work a little harder to get fouls because I can't see them being able to ultimately physically dominate you where you have to take fouls on them." And I almost was like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like, this is actually happening. But I don't think they got enough credit to being skillful. I mean, they were skilled offensively and defensively. They were smart. They were well coached. But trust me, they knew how to play that poor us motto, like poor little us, and Justin's like, "She's killing my gal. What are you doing? Get off of her." And I'm like, "What's going on here?" So it was
the best. Like I said, having smaller athletes was like the only benefit. Like, granted, we were agile and quick, and I really like that because sometimes women's games can be slow and lethargic and very boring. And I was always coming off a men's season, and I was like, "Why are you guys so slow? Why are you slow? We're swimming more. Like, you guys got to get faster." And so, but yeah, you can see even in these clips, like, the foul is not that bad, but it looks that bad. And so that really helped us. And like I said, it was like, when you see a little girl like that get crunched, the official, I'm gonna be like, "What's going on over there?" And they're human, right? They're like, yeah, she got killed. So we frustrated a lot of coaches, and it wasn't very normal. It wasn't a normal offense, and it wasn't normal to see a team of 5'1" girls walk out of the locker room, and I could see another team looking at us and being like, "Oh, this is going to be a cakewalk." And then by the end of the first quarter, they look up and they're down by 4, and they're like, "What in the world's going on?" So, but like I said, it was just something. This was really fun for me to kind of work on, to go from men's season to women's season. It was way different. And the athletes were awesome. I had some really good athletes that listened really well, and it made it very functional. So,
yeah.
Hey, Justin, go ahead.
No, the one thing I would say, just playing against them, the one thing that I tried to play Justice as many times as I could, because it makes you better a defensive team one-on-one, which is how you want to ultimately be. You want your teams to be the best defenders they can be on an island, right? And I think this was great to play a team like Justin, who was always moving, who was attacking when you weren't expecting it. And it helped me as a coach for the second half of our season, go back and says, "We know we can watch the Whittier film when you dropped your hips, how you allowed her to grab you, right? And get that inside water on you and hold that water on you." And it was great. I think I loved playing Justin as much as I could because it helped us become a better defensive team.
Hey, Justin, question for you, kind of on the analytics side. So, obviously you're I really enjoy what you're doing here. It's very much, and you coach to what team you have versus what team you'd like to have, and which is always good. Have you ever studied, time of possession? It seems that your style of offense would lend itself to really dominating in time of possession during a game. You get longer possessions, right? You drive down, you get an exclusion, you get more time, that sort of thing. Not the number of possessions, but the time they're in. Is there any correlation to that? Did you see kind of the more exclusions you drew, the greater success of winning or dominating possession time?
Yeah, we weren't built for supreme outside shooting. So, I could do a whole nother talk about 6-on-5 with this team, because what I don't show is like how fast we tried to score off of 6-on-5. And then the other thing and my women's team were, some of my best defensive teams. And you can ask Felix, we pressed nonstop and just tried to annoy the living crap out of people. We were just nonstop. I always had the frame of coaching mind that was as soon as they stop, you grab them and you hold on and you grab until they move again. And then when they stop, grab them again, and just nonstop. I want that girl to want to get out of the water and say, I'm never going back in ever again. And it's way different than men. You can't do that as much. And so the women's game and the men's game at the NCAA level, and even in high school, they're way different. But we were just I think when people saw us on the schedule, if it was non-conference, they probably got really mad at their coach. And they were like, no, I don't want to have to play Whittier. That was my objective. One, we're going to have to play a whole different style of water polo, and then they're just on you nonstop. I never really equated it to time of possessions, but as we got more complex, I did have a different set of rules and goals. So we had we tried to no more than 8 turnovers, in a game. And that was because in this type of offense, if girls are driving and we have a turnover, we're probably going to get scored on the other way. So it was a high risk and kind of high reward, but we were just pretty good at it. And you can tweak it, it's if you only want one drive because you're worried about, somebody turning the ball over, that's totally fine. It's just kind of thinking out of the box a little bit. Should I continue with this video? We got a couple minutes left. All right.
Yeah, please.
It's just a standard drive. You can see everybody in the water looking at the 5-6 side, and then that girl who is a center, she's over on the 1-2 side, drives in. And so it kind of gets her player off guard. She uses a good counter spin to seal off in front water, and it's a good pass.
Justin, can you go back there? Because a lot of times people miss that because they're watching the ball. So they can go back to see how she started that move and that drive to get that water. Because that's a great, she's. So
there's the 6 is over here in the corner, and this is my other 5 players. So that's that side. This is the 4 and the 1. And so here's a center and here's a center. And so it really looks like some sort of umbrella, but until the play develops, we probably use this is probably somewhere in the 3rd quarter, this side a lot. We've used this post a lot. And so these defenders get very comfortable. Maybe the coach has now put a better defender on those drivers. So coming from a whole different area is where
and you hear me yelling at that defender because she literally just went straight vertical, and that she could have gone either way, and then she got beat. Yeah.
So,
I think you turned to the bench and said just kind of get him because you wanted to kind of swap her out. So there you go.
So This is probably a more traditional style looking water polo play for us, if I remember this play, but we called it kitty cat a lot. So what would happen is coaches would, the players, I don't know if it was the coaches, but the players would be off of our girls a lot. They'd have to help the middle because they were so worried about the drives. And then we'd have a big switch to the other side. And I called it kitty catting because it was just like a cat following a ball. So as soon as the ball got to my player at the 1, the girl who was dropped on center is now swims out, and now center is open. And I don't think we convert on this. If you had a really good center, you would. But this was kind of like the other side of the triangle. And so that was like, the entry pass was great. The look was great. But you guys can see the length of my team was really exposed there because that girl's like 5 foot tall or 4'11", you know, so she's not going to be able to make a move when her back was to the cage. So we all kind of knew when the center's backs were to the cage, we were probably going to look for an outside shot, just because if we put it in there, they were just going to get hammered, and we've already earned 17 exclusions already, so they're not going to call another one. So here's one that's kind of looks good. This is what, you know, this is where off the line, I would put the 4-5 side players on the opposite side and the 1-2 side players on the opposite side. And so off the line, we ran the same offense, but it just looked way, way different. See, it took this girl right here in the back. There's probably 5 exclusions from here, but she's right here. And she just keeps holding front water. These girls took a lot of punishment. This is an offense where I think they play good defense on it, and they kind of take us away. And so we have to run the sides twice, but it's just a good lot of motion in the pool. See, this is what was very also, I think, beneficial in this offense is this official is supposed to be watching this back side here. And so he gets a good idea of the drives. And so it forces them a lot. And there's maybe a little duck under there, but he's got a lot to watch with the ball up here on the top. So after the ball goes here and then he sees white water, then he goes back and he's like, oh, that's horrible.
A little duck under. Are you kidding me? I'm surprised she didn't have a snorkel out in the water. And in context, just to let you know, this team right here, this was actually a pretty, like, I think I only had one player on that I played that was under 5'8", 5'9", and that was Emma Dodd, Coach Dodd's daughter.
Yeah.
Everybody else was 5'9", 5'10". I had 2 6-footers out there. I mean, and that was almost like a detriment when you're playing a team because they weren't the best perimeter defenders. And that's all. And Justin basically said, if you can't guard the perimeter and guard drives, you're gonna have a long day, and we did.
Yeah. I mean, and that was a lot of people as I started, and granted, like at USC and, those schools, and I'm sure even Felix now, like, if you're talking to a collegiate water polo coach and you find a girl who's like 5'10", super athletic, can shoot the ball hard, swims fast, moves very well and agile, then yes, that's awesome. But where I was at, we were kind of picking from the schools who were taking the top, right? They were taking that 5'10" girl that wouldn't come to Whittier, who was super agile and athletic. And so I found a use for a lot of smaller, more athletic, very agile players. And in my world, like, it didn't hurt us as much. Now, when I played USC, it hurt real bad. It hurt real bad, right? I lost on the women's side to USC 32-2. And Jovan was supposedly be my friend, so, but it didn't hurt us as much. And so in our conference, it was really good. And I think that's something a lot of high school coaches run into. It's like you have 2 kids that are playing club, 2 kids that are juniors and seniors, so they kind of know what's going on. And then you got 2 kids who it's like brand new, but they can pass. And it's like, how are we going to hide you? How am I going to make sure the very good ones are, getting the most touches on the ball? And then how are we putting ourselves in a position to kind of, be able to succeed the most? So that's how it started. And then it ended up where I was like, well, nobody really wants the 5'1" girls who are fast and very agile. I was like, so I'll just make a living off that. So, and in turn, it just became, what we had. And ended up getting some size and stuff as they went. But the kind of bread and butter was, the girls who were able to do multiple things. So
I think this is kind of like what Kristen Rodriguez is doing with the cadet and national team, Havoc, I think they call it. So it may be something. So I haven't seen her presented. I just kind of see a lot of those same elements that she was doing with those girls.
Then, well, I mean, if that's Alex's wife, then she's probably got a lot of video on Whittier,
Yeah,
so
I think it's actually not the same as Havoc. His Justin's style, like, this is a little bit more, because I think Havoc relies on a couple of perimeter players setting the tone for who's going to post up, and Justin's style is a little bit more where the ball handler was the most important on the 4-5 side, the 5 and 6. So he said, so it's a little bit different, because it was how constant there was, like, Havoc is more of a posting up, attacking at the defender, like who you're going to attack. Justin was more on attacking space and the person with the ball finding it's a one-on-one in the team concept, Justin, right? It's literally 5 one-on-one battles and the ball. Yeah. And the ball person will get the ball, whoever decides to go at it. So.
And I'll give it like a lot of credit. Like I went through a couple of years of film and just tried to find the best. And like I said, I wanted to, find a team that was good. Because like some of our conference games at that year, which we have the most film on, like it was kind of bad defense. So it was going to look really bad. I couldn't find any like early one-on-one offensive moves that we usually got 4 or 5 times a game. So that's a credit to Brown, because they weren't like over pressing, because if they over pressed on the outlet pass, then they were going to get turned. And so that was the only thing I couldn't really show early. I didn't have enough time to go through, years of tape, but that first outlet pass, a lot of the times after we scored off the post, or drew 2 exclusions off the post, the ball would get down to the 6, and I hear the coach yelling, foul and drop, foul and drop. And so right on the outlet pass, the girl would swim out there and drop her hips, and we were able to get a turn. So then it really kind of throws a lot of confusion into like, well, what do you want us to do? You want us to play zone? You want us to foul and drop? What are we supposed to do here? So, but that, I was just hoping it kind of gave a good look on kind of everything. We definitely, had some games where we scored a bunch more and stuff like that. But I just thought we had some really good views of like how the girls work together, what kind of, the defense can look, or the offense can look different. And I just highly suggest being creative. Like it keeps your kids involved, and it makes, if you've been doing this for 20 years, you can't tell me like you get really excited about the 4-5 zone. Like that's not really exciting. Like that for me, it just is like, okay, here they're gonna go. They're gonna zone that. Let's drive a guy through. Let's attack the drop, enter. Okay, blah blah blah. So for us, it was just very. For me, it was very fun coaching the women, and it started as a necessity, and we just ended up we kept doing it because I felt like nobody can really stop it that well, you know, and we can be successful, and the girls like it. Like let's just keep doing it. So. It was always really fun. I enjoyed making other people very frustrated, and we didn't win every game. But when I heard the coach yelling, I knew, like we're doing our job, you know, like we're doing our job. So
let's just say he had two people in white helping him out. Let's just say he had. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I have a couple of tactical questions, unless you wanted to move on.
No, that's all I really have. So anything you guys have questions wise is
okay. Your 2-3 players, your 23 players. A couple things. Once your front court is established, where your 23 players are in their proper spots, there's no driving, as far as I can tell. Is that not true? It's really more about switching.
Yeah. After it's done, it's done. And we got a little bit better with them being able to set back picks on the bottom line, but you got to look at it. So. You know, you counterattack, you get about 10 seconds. We get the ball down the pool, 8 to 10 seconds. And then those two girls who were the centers were usually my center defenders. So they're swimming a long way down. So, yeah, once you got it, you just don't have too much time. We would get basically look at the drives, one big switch to the other side. Is there another drive happening? Then if not, we're going to get a shot off the top. You basically have about 10 seconds left. So,
okay. And then on your counter, you're breaking out. You've got a 2-on-1, but the two athletes that reach the post positions are not your 23 players. Are you instructing them to hold inside water as long as possible, and then your 23s will come in and replace them?
Well, they would attack to the cage, like to score, right?
Correct.
And if they didn't score, then they would vacate that area because it's not their water, right? So that was even a better thing. If we had a 2-on-1 and that didn't happen, and then they would kind of spread out to the sides, and then the next wave would come. So if you have a 1-on-nobody, a 1-on-1, a 2-on-1, that kind of negates all rules. Like go to the cage and score. But it does kind of get confusing because I would tell players like, no, you have to go to your side. But then they would get it pretty quick once you said, it's like, dude, you're up. There's nobody around you. Like, go to the cage.
And then in the film that you showed, you talked about them clearing out. I observed at least 3 up drives so that they took over position 2, not 1 or not 6. And I don't know if that was what your intention was or if that just was the course of the game.
No, sometimes there was, believe me, my girls followed directions, right? They did a really good job for me. But sometimes those 1-4 side players would feel like a little lonely over there and like want to do a little drive to the middle. And I'm like, Zia Neal, what are you doing? Get out of there. Like, that's not your job. But a lot of times, because it was maybe once or twice a game, it would work. The other times it would work really bad because we're all predicated on a system, right? And so if she's in there clogging up the middle, my 2-3 players better be really aware that she's not in there, because if they drive, it's just going to kind of look like a cluster. So for the most part, they ran everything to a T. You know, you probably had about 90%, and then you had another 10% that you had to factor in, because it was hard for me to take away, because I was always telling them attack, be creative, attack. Like if you have open water, attack. Like we'll find you the ball, you know? And so along with playing together for 4 years, a lot of those girls that you saw in the water had played together since they were 8. So there was like 6 of them or 5 all from Commerce. And then I had one off the bench, and then the other one played for Cola and played for Commerce at JO. So like they had instant chemistry together, which was quite helpful as well.
And then finally, I'm assuming that all of these positions remain the same for 6-on-5, and I mean personnel wise, like the 2-3 or 2-3 players. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we were already set up, and we were trying to do one pass and score for a lot of times. because again, we weren't very long. We weren't going to get extremely powerful shifts that is very successful on 6-on-5s. You know, like our 2 out kind of took a long time for that little girl to make that 2 out move. And then she was only 5 feet tall. So like we weren't going to have a lot of success off that. We ran a lot of different 6-on-5s just to be super creative. We moved the ball a lot and then throw it as hard as possible into the post because she's only going to have like this much of a window to catch and shoot. So we were trying to score pretty much everything as fast as possible.
Well, Justin, thank you so much. Yeah, for coming on.
No problem.
This was great. Are there any additional questions?
I was just wondering, what your a typical practice look like if a lot of these girls came from a system that might be a little different? What was the most beneficial way to teach it? Was a lot of situational half-court stuff, or a lot of conditional statements? If the defense does this, then do this, or how did you kind of teach that to these girls coming from different systems?
So we had a lot of classroom time, right? A lot of whiteboard. And then after we had ran it for a year, we had video on it, which was good, right? So I could show what I would do is suggest to the captains to maybe start watching game tape with the new girls who are new to our program. Like maybe every Wednesday night, you guys get together, go on to the Whittier College Sports Network and watch a game. Like, I don't know, we can't make you do it because of the NCAA, but that would be beneficial. So a lot of them really kind of got familiar with it, but it was a lot. And you did have to, because it's way different than, 3-3, fill up the bottom zones, fill up the top line, work for center, clear out as a drop, whatever it may be. We went over a different set of rules. We never once ran a 3-3. We never once worked on that. Everything we kind of did, timeout plays, half court plays, everything was in a 4-2 setup or going to a 4-2 setup. But we did a lot of like weird stuff as we got even, another year. I think these girls are all sophomores and juniors. We started setting back picks with the 3 and the 6 because that was a lefty over there. And so if we had nothing within the last 7 seconds, we would have the 3 set a back pick to the 6. And then she was like right there in front of the cage. But it is a lot of whiteboard and a lot of like mapping it out. But I think that comes with anything a coach draws up, right? It's like you start looking at a 6-on-5 play and you're like, how are we going to do this? That's why I tried to kind of present like the rules and stuff and kind of like what I would tell the girls. It's like, make it as easy as possible for them. If you're a 1-2 side player, you go to the 1-2 side or 1-4 side. You don't go to the other side of the pool. And sometimes like that first year, it took the girls a long time. We did a lot of just swimming from one end of the pool to the other, which it shouldn't have been that hard, but we eventually got it.
It should never be that hard, right? So, but it ended up being that hard.
Yes.
Are there some more questions? Well, Justin, thank you so much. I do appreciate. This will be posted at txwaterpolo.com, along with his slideshow. Justin, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Nice seeing you, Justin.
You too, Felix. Take